Good news can often get overlooked or buried by the negative in our everyday lives. So let's change that. I'm Adrianna.
And I'm Wyatt.
We're just two ordinary people without any special qualifications or anything, trying to navigate life. We invite you to join us as we share wholesome stories, news articles of hope, and ideas about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. We are uplifting positive stories. Welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
And Merry Christmas if you celebrate and are also listening on the day this episode
Dropping
comes
on the 25th.
out. Yes, we take no breaks here. No weeks off on this podcast.
We got too much content to share.
And if you're listening after, I hope your holiday season was fantastic.
Yeah.
And not at all super stressful, navigating family situations, and hopefully just taking all the fun from the experience of the holidays. We admit there's sometimes the holidays can be a little bit stressful sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But no, hopefully it all went well for everybody. It's going well for everybody. Today's episode is all about comforting others. So it's all about when people are experiencing a hard time or it seems like they're struggling with an emotion of some kind, being that person to allow them to feel that emotion fully and giving them that opportunity to have a shoulder to cry on or have someone comfort them when they're in that time of need. And so, yeah, there's going to be some kind of sad moments in this episode, but also really cool moments of people stepping up to be that shoulder to cry on and being that person to listen. So our first story is pretty lighthearted and kind of funny, a funny way to start it off. This story comes from the subreddit Wholesome Stories, and it is titled Tales from the Classroom. The story says, I've been looking at my mementos from teaching and I thought of this. For a number of years, I taught in central Japan as an English teacher.
Another Japan-based story.
Yeah.
You got a lot of those in this podcast.
It's true.
I dig it.
It's awesome. It was a lot of fun and some of the best years of my life. One particular class, I had a bunch, 7 to 8, I believe, of boisterous 5 to 6-year-old girls. My height shocked them initially. I'm about 6'3", but the defining moment was during a class. There was a fly buzzing around the room, and like most kids, they were easily distracted. So my hand shot out, and I managed to snatch it out of the air before releasing it outside. This act cemented me as the most fearsome woman they had ever met, but also greenlit that they could be a bit rougher with me. They're a great class, if a little crazy at times. Months later, I ended up getting an injection in my shoulder. Not a big deal, but the attending nurse wasn't exactly careful, so my shoulder was pretty tender. While kneeling during one of our many games, one of the girls excitedly shakes my arm. The resulting wince and slight gasp brought the game to a screeching halt. Within a second, they've gathered around. One student lifts my sleeves and realizes, with a bit of pantomiming, that I had gotten a shot. Youngest and sweetest student dashes to the window, banging on it to get the attention of her mother, saying that she has to come in and kiss my shoulder because I was hurt. The number one troublemaker comes over to pat my hand comfortingly, all while looking me in the eye. Sensei, it's okay to cry. Last time I went to the hospital, I got a shot too, and it was very scary. We won't tell anyone, so don't feel bad about it. Heart melted. So.
Sure. Phrasing's very important there. You got a shot, not you got shot.
Yeah, little different in severity. But I just thought that was a cool, cute little moment there. And just showing, especially with children, I feel like children are so good at comforting each other when like things happen and stuff, and showing that empathy and sympathy when people maybe are in pain. It's just in being open about emotions and not shying away from being like, oh, I know that hurt me when I had that and I cried. You know, it's something that I feel like a lot of people try to kind of mask as they get older and try to mask those emotions and don't show when we're in pain or when something's really bothering us. And so I don't know, to me that was just like a reminder to kind of be like kids again, you know, allow ourselves to feel emotions. Obviously the teacher was just a little like, oh, that wasn't great, but I mean, when we are experiencing pain, to not shy away from expressing it and like trying to hide that, I guess.
Yeah, don't be afraid to let people know that something's bothering you, you know, just if nothing else for your own safety.
That's also true.
I know, I mean, not that it was a big deal, but I remember back in high school, going into high school, I had broken my shoulder like during the summer, and by the time school freshman year started, I was mostly recovered. Like I didn't like need a cast or anything at that point, or I just need to rest it and not, and I'm still going through physical therapy, but just because like I was around enough people that roughhouse enough. I did actually wear a sling just as a visual, like,
yeah, like don't
don't
with
touch
me,
it.
please. Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
mess with it. And that did actually work a couple times where they almost like messed with me a little bit, and like, oh, maybe not.
Oh, maybe don't do that.
I didn't actually need
Exactly.
the sling at that point, but it was a nice visual little indicator.
Little
Hey, don't.
reminder.
At least one.
Exactly.
But it's nice to see kids, when they show empathy like that. Sometimes, when we talked about before, they can be
There's
monsters
exceptions
sometimes.
where kids are
But they
not.
also can be truly like really empathetic and caring and
Understanding.
wholesome.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen a lot of stories like that of kids being wholesome like that in that way, showing empathy in those situations and stuff. So, yeah, I just thought that was a fun way to start it off on maybe a heavier episode in terms of comforting others,
Is that you're priming me for
These aren't
emotions?
overly, but yeah, there's some that are kind of harder to read. It's like, oh, like this one's a little sad, but really sweet at the same time.
All right.
So this one comes from the subreddit Ask Reddit. And the question was, what's the most wholesome thing a stranger has done for you? And the story says, I'm male 47. I was at the hospital because my 82-year-old mom, the core of our family, had just been diagnosed with a rare and advanced form of leukemia. She had perhaps weeks to live. My parents are immigrants to the U.S. We have no extended family, so it's just mom, dad, and us 4 kids. And mom was really the glue that held us together. So this news was devastating. Mom was quarantined in her room and sleeping. I, overwhelmed with grief and shock, was wandering through the halls of the hospital in a complete daze, utterly despondent. As I was walking down a hall in one direction, an employee of the hospital, not a doctor or a nurse because she was dressed in civilian clothes, but had a hospital employee badge on, was walking in the opposite direction. Without saying a word, she altered her course and stopped right in front of me. She didn't say anything, she just stopped me in my path, and she spread her arms. I collapsed in her arms and lost it. I hadn't cried like that in 40 years. Mom passed away 11 days later. That was 3 years ago, and I'm tearing up now just thinking about that woman's kindness. I carry that with me, to have that kind of decency to bestow the most intimate and basic of kindnesses to those most in need. Thank you, you are a hospital worker. You helped in ways I can't begin to express.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another example of a worker going above and beyond what is expected of them.
100%. And queuing that up, we actually have an episode coming up very soon here about literally called Going Above and Beyond, about people that go above and beyond their day-to-day work and stuff. So
there you go.
Yeah, look out for that. That's
I
coming
didn't
up
even
pretty
know that.
soon. Yeah, but I agree. This is a really great example of that. And I actually have quite a few stories that I've found of people just offering a hug to a stranger when they seem like they were breaking down, whether it's on a bus or on a plane or things like that. So
I mean, isn't like in general, I feel like that's a lot of the stories you find in general, like really short, like, hey, someone was nice to me, or hey, someone gave me a hug, or hey, someone just said something nice to me quick, like they don't always make it on the podcast because, we try to find slightly longer stories, but there's a lot of really quick hit stories like that.
Yeah. And it's always like surprising to me because I'm not somebody that's usually a huge hugger. Like I'm just not. And so when I see that the people that just do that for a stranger, when they notice that they seem like they need a hug, I'm just always wowed by that. Just the bravery to do that kind of a thing. Cause that is being vulnerable with a stranger to like allow them to hug you. You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, kudos to those people that do that. That's so awesome. And obviously this person really needed it in that moment. They're probably trying to be strong. It sounds like they were just pacing and stuff, trying to hold it together kind of a thing. So that giving them that opportunity to release those emotions that they're feeling. And just with a stranger where there's not going to be any judgment because I don't know you kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I just think it can be so important. And so, yeah, I just thought that was really moving in a way. So, yeah.
It's interesting how with people you don't even know, you can sometimes just tell that something's just very wrong or they're not really
something's
there. And I guess maybe that's more expected in a hospital, maybe, maybe that
Yeah.
environment, they're just kind of more accustomed to that versus just randomly on the street somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So another one, a couple little short stories, like you were mentioning, a lot of them are kind of short, but these two I thought were really sweet. So this one is from the same exact thread. And this story says, I was in Paris and I got into a huge fight with someone that I cared about. We bolted in different directions. I jumped on a crowded metro headed for my hotel and wept. Many people stared. But one dear woman fished a tissue out of her purse for me. It was really simple, but it meant a lot. To which another person responded, I was in an airport once during a particularly difficult time in my life, sobbing my eyes out on the phone to my mom. When I first sat down, it was a quiet area, but I guess a plane disembarked and a bunch of people walked by. 2 separate women wordlessly handed me tissues as they walked by. It meant so much at the time. So, yeah, it's it sounds super simple, but how often do people just stare when someone's like going through something? And be like, oh, what? And just be thinking like, what's going on? What they're like, are they okay? And so just to take that extra effort to just try to find them a tissue, like it just shows that we're not judging. Here you go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, hope you're doing okay. And in a way that's wordless and doesn't put any pressure for them to talk to you if they don't want to or anything like that, or explain what's going on. But that's just, again, I feel like it just shows that I'm not judging you. Feel your emotions. Here's a tissue to help. Well, you know what I mean? I just think that's super, super cool, and something that I think we don't necessarily all jump to do. And so the fact that people are doing that and seeing that people do that, I think that's really, really cool. So, yeah. Another story here. This one's really cute. This one comes from the subreddit Wholesome Stories, and it is titled, Thank You, Tammy. When I was a boy in 1st or 2nd grade, the small coin purse that I kept my 4 cents of milk money in, yes, I'm that old, fell out of my pocket. The teacher found it and asked the entire class who it belonged to. I raised my hand innocently enough to claim it. The class burst out laughing, and I felt humiliated. I put my head down on my desk, and I began to cry. Then, I felt a comforting hand on my shoulder, and I heard a few forgotten kind words. When I looked up, it was the least popular girl in the class, Tammy, who was comforting me. Her small act of kindness stuck with me. I grew up to be a big kid and defended weaker kids against bullies. Our school is where they sent the special needs kids to, and I remember helping many of them. As an adult, I have helped people who were short of change at the register, will volunteer to help people with moves, changed numerous tires, drove people to gas stations and helped other stranded motorists, and many other small acts of kindness. I thank Tammy for making me a better person who will help without hesitation. I hope she is well and that she has had a good life.
How old are they in the story?
They didn't say, but they said 4 cents of milk money. So clearly a long time ago. They literally said, yes, I'm
Back
not
when
old.
the penny actually mattered.
Exactly right. Exactly. But yeah, I just thought this story was so sweet. I mean, just imagine little kids when they're embarrassed in class and stuff, and so that little girl going up to comfort them.
Nothing's more emotionally devastating when you're a kid.
Right, exactly. And so for that girl to stand up and when that person is humiliated and have that bravery to go over and comfort them, that's just so awesome. And again, a good example of kids standing up. Like, if kids can do it, we can do it too, even if it's awkward or uncomfortable. Being that person to step up and try to comfort somebody when they're going through something.
See, that's the part of that's the other half of the time with like where kids can be kind of cruel sometimes, or like maybe not cruel is the wrong word, but just unaware of the impact of like how they think that's funny, so they start laughing. You know, they don't realize how hurtful that can be until they just haven't developed maybe that amount of empathy in that specific way yet. But then to see someone who then is identifying that, hey, that's not okay, or you're being there for support, is pretty cool to see, you know?
100%. So, yeah. Again, none of these stories are like huge in what happened or anything like that, but I just think that it's something that gets overlooked a lot in society, is allowing people to feel those emotions and stepping up to comfort them in a way that you think is right in the moment, and not just being a passerby. Because if no one had stood up for him in that moment, it sounds like it made a huge impact on his life, and it kind of inspired him to try to help other people out and stuff throughout school. And as he became an adult, you don't always understand how much that can affect somebody if you are to comfort them in that moment when they're embarrassed or sad or grieving or whatever it might be. So, yeah.
Butterfly effect. I can't speak.
No, it's okay. Yeah, true. Very much so. So our news article for today comes from bbc.com, and it is titled, Surprise Flower Bouquets Help Beat Loneliness. Members of the Nateby and Wharton Women's Institute created about 30 bouquets and left them around town, and had little like messages on them and stuff saying that if you know somebody that is grieving or is feeling lonely, feel free to collect these flowers and give them to them. All of the bouquets were created by members using flowers and herbs from their own gardens. And then there was also a local shop called Greg's and Spar, which sponsored this and helped to supply additional flowers for the bouquets. And then they also put a little handcrafted heart in the bouquet so people had something to keep once the flowers died. So yeah, it's just such a cool way to show people that they're, little way to comfort people in the community, basically. So to quote the article, Mrs. Craddock, 80, who is a member of this institute, said, "We let the community know so that if they know someone that is living on their own or is sad or is grieving, they can collect the flowers." But yeah, it's just kind of a cool way to comfort people by having little pretty flowers available for people to get. Yeah, so I thought that was really, really sweet.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, so.
Have there been any times where you've had to be either comfort for somebody or somebody comforted you?
One that I can think of was I was having a really rough week at work where things were just going wrong at home, like left and right. We had a scare we thought that something was going on with our boiler, and we thought that because we had a carbon monoxide leak in our house, and we couldn't figure out what was causing it. We had specialists coming in, they couldn't figure out what caused it. Thank goodness we have dogs, and so our dogs were upstairs, and the door to the downstairs of the basement was closed, so nobody was affected by it at all. We caught it really fast. Our alarm down there went off because we changed our batteries, thank God. And so, yeah, it ended up being okay, but it was a stressor every time I went to work of making sure that door was closed because we couldn't figure out what was causing it, and they said it wasn't the boiler. We think it was a freak thing. But that was really scary, and we had to spend the whole night trying to figure out what we were going to do, and it was very stressful. And then our dog, 2 days later, when we woke up, he was having issues and he couldn't walk with his right leg, and we were like, what is going on? And we both had to go to work, so we had to go in late to work and call and try to get sick time for it to go and bring him to a specialist. We were freaking out. We didn't know what was going on. So there was just one thing after another. It was the busiest week of the year for me for my work, where it was around the holidays, and so
Christmas City of the North.
I was making commercials for this parade, and so I was just absolutely swamped. And I mean, to the point where we were expected pretty much to work 14-hour days to try to fit it all in to get them all done that week. It was literally insane on top of all of this. So I just hit my breaking point, and we found out what was wrong with our dog and stuff. And I started crying at work, which I've never done. And I just remember sitting there at my desk, and I was crying. You've worked
a lot of jobs where crying at you've been a manager at a movie theater. You've been a server at Olive Garden. There's been times where you definitely where I've just could have buckled and cried a lot sooner than that.
Exactly. Yeah. This was the first time I've ever had that happen. And my coworkers noticed that I was crying, and they asked me what was going on. And so I explained everything that was happening, and they felt really bad, and they were comforting me and being it's okay. One of them brought over a tissue box, which was super nice. And then my boss found out that this was going on. And so we were supposed to work this big parade, and it was gonna be a whole thing and a lot of work, and it would be the bitter cold because that year was really cold, and I was just dreading it because I was already not getting much sleep from all the other stuff going on.
And we didn't want to leave Legolas alone at that point because he was having to take medication,
our dog,
and stuff. And
we were worried about him being alone because he was taking this, and it was kind of a scary thing. So my boss decided to just give me the rest of the day off, and he was like, you don't have to work the parade. You can go home, be with your dog, just take the weekend. You're okay. And it was just super, super nice. And I know that they were one hand short that night then, and it probably was a little harder for them, but they all, including all my coworkers, were like, don't worry about it at all. Don't feel guilty, because I felt incredibly guilty, and I was like, I can't leave this. No, I'm going to go. And they were like, no, he gave you the okay. You've gone through a lot. You're a great worker. You deserve this. Go home and just be with your dog and relax. And I was like, okay. And so I ended up going home. I cried on the way home because I was just so moved by it. And I felt guilty also because I wanted to be a help out, but I was just so moved that all of them were that caring to show comfort and be so nice about the whole thing. So yeah, it was really, really great. And I felt
just the parade. They gave you the whole rest of the day off.
They did,
because otherwise we'd have had to leave our dog home alone. Because I took the morning off, fortunately, to bring him in and stuff, and figured out what was wrong. And then we were able to kind of swap after that.
And then go in and help out. Yeah, it worked out so well. And yeah, it was very stressful, but that was a really cool thing that they comforted me with. And to this day, like it makes me kind of emotional thinking about it because it was really, really, really sweet. And they said, I remember my coworkers, they weren't always super like, I don't know, softies, I guess I would say. And like one of them was like super, super nice and was saying like, no, you deserve this. You're such a hard worker and you're so strong. Like I've never once thought you would cry at the office because this doesn't seem like you, and you're just, anyone would cry from what's going on, the amount of stuff you're dealing with right now. And like they've all told kind of stories of similar things that they'd experienced and stuff, and how like that broke them too in that moment. And so it just really helped me to feel not alone in that moment. Like I wasn't being crazy for being emotional in that moment, because I'm not usually a person that shows my emotions like that in public. So yeah, it was just really, really sweet. So it means a lot when people do stuff like that. It really, really does.
A little bit of empathy goes a long way.
Yeah.
And having the night off with their dog that's under the weather is...
Yeah, that
helps
we were
too.
worried
He's
about.
fine, by the way.
Yeah,
he's lying
totally
on the floor
good
right now. He's living his best sleepy life right now on the floor over here.
Yeah. So exactly. So, but yeah, how about for you? Do you have any moments like that?
Not quite like that, where I was not that kind of comparable story, but I know all I can think of. I want to spare the details a little bit because it's not. I don't know. It could be. I don't want to turn into that kind of episode, you know.
Yeah.
But I remember I was covering breaking news once, and at a police standoff, one of unfortunately several that happened in that course of that winter season for whatever reason. And I won't go into detail about it, but some things went down in very unexpected ways, and I guess never experienced before, never experienced it since. I had some form of a panic attack during it, where I just kind of shut down and I just kind of dropped to my knees and like I couldn't feel anything, and all the stuff's happening around me, like at the actual scene. But for some reason, people then kind of swarmed to me a little bit to make sure I was okay, even though there was way bigger things going around. I'm surprised anybody noticed that I was having an issue. Yeah. I barely noticed I was having an issue. It was a very weird and scary situation, and people were like that I don't know, just coming like running up to me and like, hey, let's call like an ambulance or something. Like I recovered, so that wasn't necessary. I was like, okay, I was able to think clearly the entire time. I just had no control from my bodily, over my motor functions at that point, weirdly enough. And again, I'm sparing the details, but it was definitely a weird situation for me, and just the people who took the time to come help me. When again, I'm pretty sure there were like people who lived in that neighborhood, like there were neighbors
that were watching the event.
So like you think
and
that
your coworkers.
Mostly, well, no, then not immediately. Eventually, they came. They were doing their job, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was too, up until literally the moment where I was like, oh, I'm shut down, because they all happened right before like a live shot or something. So everyone's doing everyone's busy.
Yeah.
So the fact that anybody like noticed that something was up with me, you know, and I wasn't making a big deal, I wasn't like flailing or anything or crying out. I just kind of dropped to my knee. That's all.
Yeah. And what was really cool too was how your boss handled it too. When you came back to work, he was super understanding, and he actually like relayed a time, a very similar shoot that he had been on when something like that happened, and how he had a very similar reaction to that, and how it like stayed with him for a long time, and kind of told you about that to make you feel a little bit better. You weren't crazy for having that reaction, and like, this is a thing that can happen when you're covering stuff like that. And he was just super nice. I remember you telling me all about that. I was like, wow, that's a really good boss to respond in that way to that, you know, and like be that vulnerable to tell you a story like that too and relate. And then he also gave you like the whole rest of the day to go home too and like relax and, you know, take a step back for a minute, which was really, really nice.
Yeah. Offered me the next day too. I didn't take it though. I should have taken it. Take time for yourself if you've been through something crazy.
Yes. We'll probably have an episode about like self-care probably in the very near future. So
maybe the story come up again at some point.
Yeah. But
not... The point of the story is the people coming to like rushing to like, hey, are you okay? You okay? Making sure I'm okay. These strangers who, again, admittedly should, I imagine would have bigger priorities of what's literally happening in front of us that caused this to happen.
But yeah, it's important. Like, yeah, being one of those people to check in when people seem like they're going through something, because you never know. You never know what people are going through. So, yeah. Kind of a heavy and way to end an episode, but I think it's important.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's really an important story. I think it's important that we cover these heavy topics and that we talk about them, because people all are dealing with their own things. Like, you wouldn't expect how many things are probably not being talked about that people are dealing with under the surface.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that if you are dealing with something like that, that you allow yourself to feel it and don't just try to mask it and try to act like it's not a thing that you're feeling. Feel it. Allow yourself to really experience those emotions. If you need to cry, sometimes it's really good to just cry. Like, even if it's in your own bedroom in the privacy of your home, and just like let it out. Turn on a sad song or something and just let it out, you know? And so there's that part of it. And then if you notice somebody that you know, or even a stranger, and you're like, they seem like they're holding back an emotion, giving them that okay to feel it in whatever way that looks like, by offering a hug, by offering a tissue if they're crying, or whatever it is, being that person to give them that it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel your emotions. Do you need help, or do you need someone to listen? Whatever it is. And again, that can be such an uncomfortable thing to do, but it's also such an important thing to do. So I think it's an important thing that we talk about on this podcast.
Yeah.
So, all right. With that, we will end today's episode. Our next episode is reflecting, celebrating, and aspiring. And it's going to be our New Year's episode, because it literally comes out on New Year's Day. So we're going to talk about all the stuff about the past year, in terms of, in general, people being able to reflect on their past year and think about celebrate the things that they did do that were great, and then talk about aspiring and what the next year or 5 years will look like for people and stuff. So it's going to be a really fun New Year's episode. I'm really excited. And yeah, if you have a positive story that you would like to share, whether it's something that you did or something that you saw happen to somebody else, whatever it may be, please send it to us at upliftingpositivestories@gmail.com. We love reading listener submitted stories. It's so fun for us, and it really is really inspiring for us as well. So yeah, if you have them, please send them in. Also, we have a Reddit thread, which is Uplift Positive Stories. You can also share it on there anonymously if you would like as well. There's another option. And yeah, if you're listening on YouTube, if you would be willing to like and subscribe, that would be awesome. We really, really appreciate the support.
And no matter where you listen, if you're enjoying the show, please share with your friends and family. Please spread the positivity as we're trying to share these stories around. Like, let's get it out there more.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks so much for listening, and please check in next Wednesday. We hope you have a great rest of your day.
And stay positive.